Will you marry me? I love you with all my heart.
No, I can't marry a mechanic. I know you trained me in school for 3 years, but I can't just marry a mechanic. 3 years, but I can't just marry a mechanic.
The afternoon sun was sharp over the university gate when Emeka as everyone called him, stood there holding a single red rose and a small velvet box. He had rehearsed the words 100 times on the drive over, his hands still carrying the faint smell of engine oil, even after he had scrubbed them 3 times at the sink. When Oma walked through the gate with her coursemates, laughing, her bag hanging loosely off one shoulder, she stopped the moment she saw him. Emeka took a breath, walked toward her, and went down on one knee. Oma. His voice was steady, even though his heart was not. 3 years. You know what these 3 years mean to me. I have watched you grow. I paid every bill, not because I wanted something back, but because I love you and I believe in you. I want to spend my life with you. Will you marry me? The crowd erupted. Phones came out. Someone started chanting, say yes, and it caught like fire. 10 voices, 20, clapping, laughing, recording. Oma looked down at him, then at the ring, then at the crowd. Then something shifted in her face. Emeka, she said it quietly at first, then louder so the crowd could settle. I appreciate everything you have done for me. Truly, you have been there when nobody else was. But, she paused, and in that pause, Emeka already felt something break. I cannot marry a mechanic, I'm sorry, I have a future to think about. I can't. The crowd went silent for exactly 2 seconds. Before Emeka could even rise from his knee, a black Mercedes rolled through the gate. It stopped close. The door opened slowly, and a man stepped out, tailored trousers, clean shoes, a jaw that looked carved. He walked straight to Oma like he owned the air around him, pulled her into a hug, then reached into his jacket and produced a ring that caught the afternoon light like a small sun. He got down on one knee the same way Emeka had, except everything about him, the car, the clothes, the watch, said something different. Oma's hand went to her mouth. Then she nodded, laughing, almost crying. Yes, yes. She turned once to look at Emeka, who was still standing there with his velvet box open and his rose in his hand. I'm sorry, she said. And then the man took her hand, they got in the car, and the Mercedes pulled away. Emeka stood in the dust the car left behind. The crowd was already replaying videos, already laughing, already sharing. Someone walked past him and said loudly enough for others to hear, Mechanic Waywan Mary graduate, see your life. He tucked the ring back into his pocket, set the rose on the ground slowly, like it was something fragile, and walked to where he had packed his old Camry. Nobody looked at him with pity. They looked at him the way people look at something that entertained them. He drove home. He called his apprentice, Bright. After today's work, lock up the shop. Go home and rest. He did not explain why. He sat in his room that night and did not eat. By the next morning, the video was everywhere. Someone had uploaded it with the caption, Mechanic proposes to girlfriend, fine boy comes and takes her same day, and it had 30,000 views before noon. The comment section was a market of cruelty. This is what happens when you date above your level. She used him for 3 years. LMAO. He was funding her degree. Did you see his face when the Benz pulled up? I can't breathe. Mechanic man, go service your heart. His phone rang with numbers he didn't save. People who knew him from the street began to tease him at every corner. He stopped going outside. He stayed in his room with the curtains drawn, eating once a day, replaying nothing because he refused to watch the video. Yet he didn't need to. The images played in his head on their own. When he finally went back to the shop after nearly a week, a customer drove in for a brake job. While Emeka was under the car, he heard the man talking to someone outside. You know say now that mechanic for that viral video? The one way kneel down, the girl reject him, Benz come carry him? He heard laughter. He kept working. He tightened the bolt until his knuckles went white. A few days after that, a woman came to pick up her repaired vehicle, and while settling the bill, she looked at him with that particular expression, half pity, half amusement, and said, So you're the one. Aya, "Don't worry, mechanic can still find wife." She laughed on her way out, as if she had said something kind. Emeka gave her change, thanked her, and waited until she was out of sight before he sat down on his stool and pressed his hands against his eyes for a long moment. Oma's new life began like a dream and curdled like milk left in sun. Doten, her husband, had a house in Lekki, a generator that never went off, and a wardrobe of shoes she used to see only in magazines. For the first month, she walked through those rooms like she was afraid to touch the walls. It was beautiful. She sent pictures to her friends. They replied with fire emojis. But Doten worked in a way that had no edges. No morning, no evening. Just work and deals and calls that came at midnight. When he was home, he was not really home. She would sit across from him at dinner, and he would be on his phone, eating with one hand, not asking her a single thing about her day. She tried to talk once about a job she was considering. Something small, an administrative role at a firm nearby. He looked up from his screen just long enough to say, "You don't need to work. What is the point?" and looked back down. She stopped bringing it up. Then one Saturday she made plans with her university friends. They were meeting at a restaurant in the island, a simple afternoon thing. She was dressed and ready by noon. Doten walked in, looked at her, and asked where she was going. Cancel it. No explanation. No discussion. She called her friends and said something came up. After that, her world got smaller. She stopped getting invitations because she always had something that came up. Her friends stopped calling. She began to measure her own movements, not because he threatened her directly, but because the atmosphere in that house made her feel like she was always standing at the edge of something. Then he hit her the first time. It was over something she no longer even remembered clearly. A comment, a phone call she had taken in the other room, some minor thing. His hand came fast, and she hit the wall. She stood there, stunned, tasting something metallic. He looked at his own hand like it surprised him, then walked away and came back an hour later with food from a restaurant and acted as though nothing had occurred. She ate the food in silence and cried in the bathroom with the tap running. It happened again and again. She learned to read the signs in his mood the way you read weather. She became very small inside that large, beautiful house. She had nobody to call. She had pushed away everyone from her old life. Everyone except, somewhere in the back of her mind, one person. 8 months into the marriage, Oma showed up at Emeka's mechanic shop. She came in the late afternoon when the work was slowing. She wore a long-sleeved shirt in the heat, which told a story even before she sat down. Emeka looked up from the engine he was working on and stared. He did not smile. He did not move toward her. He wiped his hands on his rag and waited. She sat on the bench near the wall and started talking, slowly at first, then faster, the words coming out like something she had held sealed for too long. The loneliness, the isolation, the nights she cried without making sound, the way he hit her, the places on her body that had learned to expect pain. A woman stepped out from the small office beside the shop. Amara, Emeka's girlfriend, carrying 2 bottles of cold water. She handed one to Emeka without acknowledging Oma, though it was obvious she knew exactly who she was. Emeka took the water, thanked her, and looked back at Oma. "You should go," he said. Not unkindly, but without any opening. Oma left. She came back a second time 2 weeks later. This time she had clearly been crying recently. Her eyes were still swollen. She started again from where she left off, adding new details, new injuries, a new night that had been worse than the others. She said she had nowhere to go. She said she was scared. Emeka stepped out from under a car, stood up straight, and looked at her directly. "Oma, the man you chose, choose him. Call the police if he's hurting you. Go to your family, go somewhere. But you cannot keep coming here." Amara had come to stand in the doorway now, arms folded, watching with an expression that said everything she chose not to say aloud. "This is my workplace," Emeka continued. "I will not disrespect her, because you are in trouble. Emeka, please. Go." His voice was not raised. It did not need to be. She stood there a moment longer, perhaps hoping something in him would shift. Nothing did. She turned and walked out of the shop and into the loud, indifferent afternoon. Emeka watched her go, then crouched back down beside the car. Amara brought him his tool, and he took it without a word. Outside, the street carried on, the noise of traffic, the smell of dust and exhaust, the ordinary sound of a city that remembered nothing and kept moving. Emeka's hands found their work again, steady and sure. The same hands that had once held a rose at a university gate while the world laughed. He had become something they could not laugh at anymore. And he had done it quietly, the same way he had always done everything, with his hands and without looking back.